Do you want to become a better reader of research? If so, you are in the right place. My name is Matt Tometz, and welcome to the fourth video of my video series on how to read research studies better and just be a more informed consumer of research. If you haven't watched the first three videos, please do so. Links are in the description below, as all of these videos build on each other, and there will be at least one more video in this series coming soon. As always, please subscribe if you want to stay up to date with my content. Please hit the like button if you like the video. Comment down below for feedback, what you want to see next, and you can get all the gear I use on Amazon in the description below as well. We finally made it to the discussion, conclusion, practical application section of a study, and for this video I'll be using discussion and conclusion interchangeably. And as always, I'm going to give you questions you can ask yourself while reading these sections and actionable things you can do as well. Obviously, these sections all tie in together with the research study, that's why you have to understand all parts of it. But this section is where you're really going to have to use your critical thinking skills to evaluate it to the best of your ability. When reading the discussion, conclusion, and practical applications, it's not really dissecting the section itself, but really is it lining up with the rest of the paper? Because anyone can say anything. It's, do they have the right rationale or the introduction? Did they do it the right way? The methods? And do they have the data to prove it, the results? So what's the point of a discussion, conclusion section of a paper? Depending on what journal the article is from, they might call it different things, but this is where they bring it all together. This is where they tie in every section of the paper into the big takeaways, basically applying everything they did from their rationale, from their methods, from their results into what does this mean? When reading the discussion, ask yourself, relative to the introduction, did they really fill that gap in the literature? Did they fulfill the purpose of their study? Were their results lined up with their hypotheses? Relative to the method section, are the conclusions/limitations mentioned for the study itself, and how can it be improved for the future? Relative to the results, do the conclusions line up with the results of the statistical tests completed in the study? Tying this back to the context of reading the study in the first place, applying it to our own situation to become better, when reading the discussion section, ask yourself, what they find? Can it/how does it apply to my situation, and how can it be built on in the future? Also, when you're done reading the conclusion section, try giving it a grade or an evaluation report. Just a few bullet points on your likes, dislikes, strengths, weaknesses, what you would have done differently if you were the researcher, if you thought it was a sound study, or did it all come together? Was it as applicable as you thought it would be, and everything along those lines? Because when you come back to the study in the future and reference it, you're already going to have those initial thoughts, which is going to make reading it again in the future that much more efficient. One thing unique to the discussion section of a study is that the researchers will compare the results of their own study to other relevant studies on that specific topic in that field. And this is important because not only do they comment on how well the study did itself, but how does it stack up against other relevant studies. Now, if the study was relatively similar, there weren't too many big changes or tweaks, maybe it was the same methods, just a different population, or maybe it was just a small tweak here or there in the methods that would make it unique, then you would expect the results to be pretty similar to other relevant studies. And if it was a relatively novel, new, outside-the-box study, you would expect the results to be pretty different from other studies. So this is a tool you can have in your back pocket specific to the discussion conclusion section of how to evaluate the study itself. And again, going back to references being king, this is going to be an easy way to find relevant studies in that specific space. What is the purpose of a practical application section? The purpose is to bridge the gap between the study and the field, or actually applying it. Everything's fine and dandy on paper inside the walls of a research lab, but how do we actually apply it, right? This goes back to the original context of reading this study in the first place. And if you were reading the whole paper from the beginning with this context, this lens of how does this help me, how am I actually going to apply it, chances are when you get to the end, you should already have a pretty decent idea of what this section is going to say. Now, this isn't to say to disregard the researchers' recommendations and practical applications. I think that there's a ton of value in what they have to say. They're the experts in their study. They did it themselves. They should have a pretty good idea of what it actually means, which you should be evaluating throughout the entirety of the paper anyways. But there's also as much value in you being the expert in your own situation. So when it comes down to reading this section, it would be meeting the researchers in the middle of what you believe for yourself, your own critical thinking skills of your own context. So whenever you read the section, ask yourself, make comments. I agree with this recommendation they made. I don't agree with this one. I'll take half of this one and then tweak it to my situation, and things along those lines to get the most out of this section.